Hi, everyone. My name is Representative April Berg, and welcome to Kitchen Conversations. It is absolutely fantastic to see you on this slightly drizzly day in the Pacific Northwest. I am excited to be bringing to you today a conversation that so many of you have asked for. It's a conversation about local government supporting local businesses. I'm excited to have with us today a guest who knows all about this, both because of her lived experience and her experience running for our local Mill Creek City Council. And that's Melissa Duque. She's a mom, she is a project manager, and she's the chair of our Parks and Rec Board right here in Mill Creek. So, Melissa, I'm going to let you do a little bigger introduction of yourself so that folks know exactly who you are.
Well, thank you, April. I really appreciate you having me on your kitchen conversations. I look forward to these. So I feel truly blessed that I get to join you and chat today. My name is Melissa Duque, and I am running for Mill Creek Position 6 in the primary that's coming up. And I'm very excited to be learning about this whole process. I have been a volunteer with the city for about 5 years, give or take, and very fortunate to be part of the Parks and Recreation Board and working on our green spaces and our parks and recreational programs. And I just think there's an opportunity to voice the issues and the concerns that we have brought up in Parks and Rec onto City Council. I think there's an opportunity for a fresh perspective that way that's currently not on City Council. And as you mentioned, my lived experience, I do freelance project management. So there is this opportunity for us to think through how we can be supporting our local government, how can we be supporting local businesses through our local government.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic background. That's why I always think it's best when folks tell the viewers a little bit about themselves, because you can do it way better than I can. And I guess so that kind of leads me to my first question. You're here, you're in the community, you're active. And one question I get a lot from community members, from even my own family, is how can we as consumers, as community members, support local small business? We're in a public health crisis coming out of it, but that question is still top of mind for so many people.
I absolutely agree. Our community and businesses have been really hit hard due to the economic impact of COVID-19. I think in part of that is we need to take steps to promote our existing businesses in our community so that they're successful and their employees that have been able to hang on during this time. And that includes, how can we find those opportunities for them, not just to get new businesses, but get their name out, thinking about, community events that feature local businesses. And as I previously mentioned, with my experience with Parks and Recreation, even thinking about our recreational programs. And I think part of that promoting of existing businesses is definitely thinking through how can we do shop local campaigns, stay local, buy local. It's specifically for, our businesses that are here and what they're working on. And it's not just ads in magazines, but it's really thinking through, what are those opportunities? What are those experiences that people can have that will want them to stay here and not go necessarily to another city?
And thank you for that, because I think people forget about the importance of folks staying and shopping in their own communities. But you said something I kind of want to dig deeper on. You talked about recreation and about supporting recreation programs, that's a local government thing. So why would supporting recreation be an essential part of helping small businesses, of helping the cities, our government, keep local businesses supported?
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget that those recreational programs you find in, Mill Creek Magazine or things like that are small businesses who employ, who have employees who are the coaches on teams or work on the volunteer aspect. And what I think people sometimes forget when it comes to that is how important it is as kind of like a jewel in a city. Where I grew up in California, the recreational programs that my city had were the only opportunity I had to join sports or activities because those things weren't available growing up. And so for my children, it's the same thing. I'm looking for those opportunities in trying to figure out. So one way of doing that is that we have a support system for those programs to be able to be successful here. And not just necessarily for children. There's a lot of great programs that way, but also for hobbies, interests, in terms of how do we better our skills for, websites or developing, how do we work with Excel, those kind of things. But those are all put on by people who have businesses, and a lot of time they bring in speakers who that's their thing that they're doing and they're promoting. And when it comes to small businesses, we always think of like that brick and mortar, like the location. You walk downtown center and what are these businesses here? But we forget about all those like little things that kind of build it up. And I really think highlighting programs like our recreational ones that are available to seniors, to families, and the events that focusing on that like different demographics in our community is really important, especially as we do as Mill Creek changes and as we grow in the way that we are.
That's huge. And that you put it in a really understandable context for me, because it's when you said rec programs and you said supporting small businesses, I just couldn't put it together in my head. And now when I listen to, you're right, those are small businesses in our recreation catalog, and folks participating in those classes. And I got to ask you too, it made me think of something that maybe, I don't know if I'm the only one that calls it this, but what folks call the French fry effect. So you're sitting with your kids, watching them play baseball or soccer or do another sport, and you get a little craving, right? And you go out for French fries. Maybe it's something different. Maybe it's a hamburger. Maybe it's a milkshake. I don't know. For me, it's French fries. And I'm going to buy those French fries in the local community where my kid is participating in recreational sports or activities or teams. And so that in turn helps a whole nother layer of small businesses. So rec is very important.
Yes, it's that let's all go to Mod Pizza, just naming like
absolutely.
Afterwards, let's all go to Cold Stone. Let's all go as a team. Let's all go, or, oh, what a great game. Let's go, to this place to get pie. Those traditions that maybe at the moment you're not thinking, oh, I don't want to cook. I have this like long I have my sons are in Mill Creek T-ball and summer ball. And so, it's from 5 o'clock is for my 4-year-old. And then, 6 o'clock is my next age one. And, what do we do for dinner? How do we figure those things out? So having access or having those opportunities to kind of, what can we do that have us already outside? And, it's one of those things where we forget that impact. And, the same thing, I've never called it French fry, and I love that. But that's what I always think about parades, which is one of those things where I understand that parades can sometimes, be tricky with, businesses and holding up, parking. There's many elements to it. But I always go to a restaurant after a parade. We always pick up snacks, from Frost Donuts. There's all these locations where we then, are eating while we're waiting for the parade. So that's why we go to these, or the Halloween trick or treat. There's these opportunities, grabbing a sandwich from Central Market. I'm just naming a lot of businesses in Mill Creek, but these are the things that I do, and it's important to think about how they're all interconnected. And that's why we want, for these programs to thrive, because we want people to stay here. And I think the pandemic really showed that when we were limited to where we could go, and we didn't know how far we could go or where we could walk to, so having that, I think is one of those opportunities that it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, and I thank you that you also have experienced the French fry effect. So I'm not the only one, because sometimes you feel like, am I the only mom who's thinking about something other than that score, that baseball game? But you brought up something else, that the pandemic, right, and the effect it's had on our shopping habits, which has in turn had an effect on our main streets, but online businesses, and I think there's a way to do it, right? Like I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I'm listening to a leader like yourself, and you're so creative talking about recreation and its support system for small business. But talk to me a little bit about online shopping, and how can we do that in a way that supports our local small businesses?
Yes. Well, I think when it comes to the online local sustainable businesses is how I like to think about it. It is how, for example, the pandemic, and even actually before that, so many, I'm going to give the example as personal experience, mothers that I know, my friends who are mothers who have maybe decided to become stay-at-home moms, but they're still doing their side hustle or their business.
Yeah.
That's a small business. That's someone who, many of them, it becomes their full-time career. And it was something that sparked a passion in them that they didn't know, that maybe they weren't getting fulfilled in a 9 to 5, that's now being able to create, whether that's, doing quilts or special orders of things. And same thing, for, what we've seen with not having to go to offices, is this opportunity of being able to create these Etsy style or online kind of commerce opportunities. And I don't think that has been explored in terms of Mill Creek highlighting those businesses, providing a space. And I say that because during the pandemic, I'm very vocal and very engaged in our local Facebook communities for Mill Creek. There's a few, and that was one of the top kind of suggestions when people were looking for masks. Is anyone local selling masks? And then and there were, and I just happened to know a couple people who were in Mill Creek, because I've actually purchased other fabric material projects that they made for like my baby carrier, or just for other things, or how many are who have the appropriate kitchen set up, and they're doing their bakers in their home, and have those commercial kitchens and have done that. How can we support them? How can we be thinking about them? It's just one of those things where it's that perspective thing I was telling you about why I was running, is I just think not everyone thinks this way, and I think there's that voice or that thought process is missing on current city council, and that's why I want to highlight these things and I talk about them, because I think it's important that those businesses that are in someone's home feel still connected to Mill Creek and feel that they are still part of a community, because as we all experience, it can be very lonely just to be at home in front of a computer. So it's nice that there's still that, that social connection. So how do we encourage them as business owners who, a brick and mortar, not for them? It just doesn't make the most sense, and, not related to that, but even the pickup of like online pickup for groceries and things like that. I mean, Central Market is going through a whole phase. They're going through a whole change inside, but outside there's a dedicated for ordering for pickups. And I love that there's that online commerce thing that maybe 4 years ago, people would go, you can just go to the grocery store and go inside.
You don't need somebody to bring your groceries to your car.
Right? I was that person. I was absolutely that person. I like to go pick up my things. Now, for various reasons, we've learned, what was nice is we've learned there's actually a lot of people for various reasons why they can't do that, whether it's mobility or time, or they work in downtown and they don't make it in time to go to the store, and they want to reprioritize kid time versus groceries. There's all of these elements, and who are we to what we're responsible for, I believe, is just helping promote those opportunities and making people's lives better. So I just love any type of thinking kind of outside the store.
Outside instead of outside the box. No, I love that so much. And I love that you mentioned the Etsy stores and the fact that those are still local small businesses. I think, and I'll just put it out there, I will completely own my bias, and I live in Mill Creek. And so, Melissa, some of the things you're saying right now about ways our city can improve are things that I know to be specifically true, hyper local and very true. And I did see some cities do things like delivery services and different things for their small businesses, and also highlighting those ones that weren't brick and mortar. So thank you for bringing that up, because I think that's an area, having a voice like you, down the street at City Hall would be fantastic. Another question I get, and I will tell you, I get this question so often. I think people think I'm running for city council. I'm not. Let's put it out there. But this is a question I get all the time. New businesses, right? So we've talked about existing businesses. We've talked about online business. How can our local government support bringing new business? And mind you, it's not the easiest of times. We're at the end of a public health crisis. It's, a global pandemic. And so what are your ideas? Because I'm telling you, I don't know if anybody at home is doing it, but I'm taking some notes. Melissa, you've got some good stuff.
Well, I'm very hopeful. I think this is a really good month to talk about this in July because, you know, vaccination rates and all of those things. But I'm hopeful because there's a lot of businesses that are recently opened up. There's a coffee shop in south part of Mill Creek near 164th called Mixed. That's fantastic, that I love very much, and they just opened a month ago. There's also a coffee shop in Mill Creek Town Center that opened up during the pandemic, Bequest, that I
remember
love.
that.
They're, you know, two great, you know, new businesses in areas that were, you know, that just fantastic that there's these opportunities. But for me, in my experience, when it comes to these new businesses, so a few years back, I worked with the Arts and Beautification Board. Not part of the board. I actually got to do the research on the historical panels they were working on. And the reason why I mentioned this kind of like out of left field is that part of the process is I got to interview former city council members, a couple of the current council members, and residents. If people reached out and said, "Oh, I have stories to tell about Mill Creek," because it's the, you know, the history, and then, you know, just talking to people, everyone's kind of like lived experience and variety. It was historical, so there was definitely a lot of people who may have been here before Mill Creek was a city, when they were first purchasing, you know, MCCA, and some people who actually lived here before MCCA and, you know, had a land, or, you know, they talked about what it looked like for their parents when they lived there, that kind of conversations. And I always asked a question about Town Center. And what was really great, and even in the news articles that I searched, is there was this like push that seemed to be, right, that we wanted unique stores to Mill Creek. Didn't want what was happening in Linwood with the Alderwood Mall. Didn't want that. What wanted were businesses, small, unique businesses that made kind of Mill Creek stand out. And I still believe that is the case in terms of listening to the local community, online community groups that exist that are vocal about what kind of businesses they want, what they think is lacking. You know, you'll see at least once a week some type of post about what is, you know, what we have maybe too many of, or what we don't have anything of, or why they go to another city, you know, to find that. And so I share all this because I think the opportunity for new businesses and for local government, it's kind of like a three-part thing. It's one, when I talk to people about Town Center and the initial steps for that, a lot of the city council members who I spoke to told me about how active they were in trying to get businesses into this space. And I don't see that happening in any of the city council meetings I've attended, or in any conversations or newspaper articles. It's not visible that is something that's happening. There's something kind of lacking there. With respect, I understand the pandemic has been going on. So there's this push, this opportunity to really make those conversations happen. Two, in terms of getting that information from the community, that's something that local government, so your city council, can be directing, you know, as its purview, city staff to look into. What is it that people want? What is that touch? Or just asking them themselves. And, you know, there's a perfect little survey focus group, you know, which is our online groups that talk about these things. So is anyone capturing that data? Is anyone looking into what are these places and then sharing it with the people who are, you know, the companies, the individuals who own these spaces where there are physical, you know, businesses, to tell them, hey, just, you know, here's a quarterly look at what people are they saying they're requesting. So if you are looking for new businesses, maybe, you know, take a gander at this. You know, there's so many ways of doing that type of survey or user, you know, information. So I think that all, you know, kind of makes sense that they're being proactive, that, you know, we are proactive in getting the new business here and thinking about what those opportunities are in terms of attracting the new businesses.
Yeah, and I love that so much because there was a couple words in there that just jumped out at me, which was being active. And to your point, it's going to take folks being out there, being champions and rah-rahing for our Main Street. Yeah, and I think for every city out there, we need champions for Main Street, small businesses, local businesses. But the other word you used was inclusive, and making sure that it's inclusive of what people really want and what people need. And it makes me think of, specific to our city, but I think this is definitely countywide and statewide, growth and the demographic changes that are coming with that growth. And so talk to me a little bit about how that's going to, either attract or affect the new businesses that we're going to be trying to, or that this, I say we, again, I'm not running for city council, that you as a community leader will be trying to bring into our city.
Well, just on that, I do want to say that the we is really important, right?
That's
Like
true.
we should all feel ownership of local
Yeah,
government, and we should all feel, that we have a voice in that. So I absolutely, and obviously you're a fantastic representative. I will say that, just because you make us feel that way. We feel inclusive, and so I think that's part of it. But there's no surprise that Mill Creek, our different demographics are changing, and so we need to think about what are our needs being met, looking into what are those changes, how are we growing with young families, how are we helping our seniors in terms of having that walkability that so many want to be able to access businesses and access activities. Same thing with the young families, thinking about those recreational programs. What are the things they're looking for that the city can provide? I think also, we talk about it a little bit for parks and recreation. There's specific demographics that we have that we're focusing on as a board, and one is definitely families and young children, and then of course we have seniors. So where there's this balance, but we continue to think about what is that, middle school, high school, young adult, what are the things that we can be providing in terms of activities, for them? And so thinking through, we think about it with that park and recreational lens, but also what are those types of businesses and needs for those hangouts and opportunities for families to have that kind of connection. So I think thinking through that, and then also supporting, BIPOC new business owners. How can we create that type of space? How can we encourage that type of space? How can we, women business owners? What are those? What are those? And really, it's not. It sounds horrible. It's not. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel, because there are so many local governments that are doing these things. And so, are we looking at what they're doing? Are we talking to them about these opportunities and seeing what these case studies are about how do we do this and what are the lessons learned, and being active in looking for those? I think that's part of how we can work with how we can make sure that there is that lens, that focus on our demographic changes, and how we can be supporting our residents, business owners, and thinking through, even taking a look at, who works in these businesses, are, how are we helping them, identifying who they are, where do they live, are there opportunities to assist them, are there, there's lots of, in the news, lots of conversation about, not find, lots of places are looking for employees. So how are we responding to that? And I think, those are, again, all those talking points you have to be proactive. You can't just say it and leave it there. You have to look for it.
And that proactivity comes from leadership and leadership at that city level, that hands-on, boots on the ground kind of level. So I love your ideas. I love that it was so inclusive, even, when you talked about seniors and families, and just, that's why our family chose Mill Creek. It's because we knew we could raise our kids, and we could also age in place and age in a community that's going to always be vibrant and thriving. And so everything you just said made me go, yes, it's like, this is why we're here. So thank you for that. I always like to end my show with this question, and so it won't be a surprise to a lot of viewers. But I gotta ask you, Melissa, as you're looking at local government, you are such an amazing leader in our community, and you've probably seen a lot this year, right? Being a mom and working and seeing how the pandemic has taken its toll in our local community. What would be your moonshot for local governments to support small and local businesses? And for those of you who don't know, a moonshot is something I'm defining as, it seems impossible, but oh my goodness, it is so necessary. So what would be your moonshot for this topic?
Well, I'm hoping not impossible, but I definitely think, as I'm learning, it's definitely getting me elected. I think
That's a great answer.
Having people vote for me is, part of that. I am, when I decided, to run, I definitely, I thought long and hard about what this meant and what could I contribute. What are those opportunities? Is my voice already being, you know, is already being represented on city council? What does that look like? And I think that would be part of it. And in terms of, the priorities we talked about for me, in getting supporting existing businesses, supporting, bringing in new businesses, being that champion that you mentioned, that's huge. And I think those are the things that we really need to focus on, in Mill Creek, in finding how to prioritize and really, walking the walk about why supporting local businesses is so important, and how tactically we can do that, and what are those steps to be able to get that done.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I love the fact that you said electing youth. In case folks didn't hear it, it's not going to be a moonshot, Melissa. I can see that in your future. But I think to your point, making sure that we're walking that walk as city leaders. So, and honestly, that's why we need you and your voice there, is because that shouldn't be a moonshot either. That should be something that's already happening. But I know you're going to get it done. So thank you for sharing these amazing ideas. They're not just Mill Creek specific. This can go for any city, anywhere in our state. So I hope viewers have enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. It's been great to talk with Melissa Duque, Mill Creek City Council candidate. Next week, we are going to have a great conversation about community resiliency. That is something that I have been talking with so many of you about how to make and maintain resilient communities. My special guest for that conversation is going to be someone who does walk the walk, and that's Brandy Donahue. She is running for county council, but she also is a Red Cross employee. She's got some amazing ideas about community resiliency. So please join us right here next Tuesday at 3 p.m. for Kitchen Conversations. Have a great rest of your week.